Welcome once again aboard our ship, on a continuous journey toward the essence of truth. Since our journey began, we have been sailing through waves of questions, searching for answers, and moving step by step closer to the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance. In the previous episode, we reflected on the question, are there laws that govern my life and my relationship with my Creator? Today, we continue our journey across this vast sea to explore a new question. Could religion be the law that Allah has established? Let us continue the journey together, for the road ahead of us is still long, the heart still beats with passion, and the mind thirsts for more knowledge. Far from the commotion of the world, there lies a grand palace overlooking a fertile valley rich with rivers and fruit-bearing trees. This palace belonged to a wise man named Yusuf, who lived there with his three sons, Adam, Ramez, and Omar. Yusuf was a compassionate father, yet strict in teaching his sons responsibility. One day, Yusuf gathered his three sons in the grand hall, where sunlight reflected off the walls adorned with golden decorations. He stood before them, his voice filled with dignity, but also brimming with love, and said, "My dear sons, I will be leaving the palace for some time. I have an important matter to tend to away from you, but I will return one day. During my absence, I am leaving you here to live and manage this palace on your own. I built this palace to be a safe and comfortable place for you. It is filled with everything you need and more. You will find food, water, and beauty surrounding you from every side. But remember, this place is not yours forever. It is a trust that has been placed in your hands, and one day, you will be held accountable for what you did with it. I have left you a book containing all the instructions you need to live peacefully in this palace and to organize your lives here. The book explains how to live together with a spirit of love and how to preserve this place so it remains as beautiful as it is." Then he paused for a moment, raised a large book he was holding in his hands, and said, "This book contains everything you need to live here wisely and happily. It includes instructions on how to manage the palace, take care of the garden, and maintain order in this place. If you adhere to what is in it, you will live in peace and be prepared for my return. But if you ignore my instructions, the palace will begin to fall apart and you will face the consequences. And I'd like to remind you of something very important. In the book, I have left you a way to communicate with me at any time. If you need my advice or want to tell me something, you will find a way to do so. You can contact me through the phone in the palace. I am not as far from you as you may think. I will always be with you at any time you choose to reach out to me. I am close to you, watching over everything, and I know what you do. I will hold each of you accountable for your actions. I will reward those who act wisely and punish those who act wrongly. Live in the palace with love, and always remember that you are here for a short time. What you do today will determine your future tomorrow." Yusuf looked at his sons with a long gaze filled with love. Then he added, "I trust you and know that you are capable of succeeding. But remember, the true test is not in my presence here, but in what you do when I am away." After that, he bid them farewell and left the palace quietly, leaving behind his three sons and the book, which held the key to their success in their hands. As soon as Yusuf left, the sons began to handle the palace in their own ways, each according to his personality and view of life. Adam, the eldest brother, he was practical and independent in his opinions. He did not openly reject his father's instructions, but he did not see the need to adhere to the book. He would say to himself, "I know what I need to do. I don't need a book to tell me how to live." Adam busied himself with taking care of the furniture and organizing the palace from the inside, making sure the rooms were clean and elegant. However, he ignored the garden and the stored resources, believing that the palace would remain as it was without any extra effort. Ramez, the middle brother, he was reckless and loved pleasure. He paid no attention to his father's words or the book. He saw the palace as a place for fun and enjoyment. He began hosting parties, consuming food without any regard, and inviting strangers to indulge in the palace's luxuries. He would say to his brothers, "Why worry about the book or the future? Enjoy life now. This palace is ours, and no one will take it from us." Omar, the youngest brother, was the most loving and respectful toward his father. He took the book from the very first moment and began reading it carefully, seeing the instructions as a clear guide for what they should do. Omar would say to his brothers, "Our father left us this book because he wants us to take care of the palace. We have to work together and follow what's in it." But he always clashed with Ramez's indifference and Adam's arrogance. Days passed, and conflicts began to arise between the three brothers. Omar tried his best to convince them to work together to preserve the palace, repeating the book's warnings about neglect. Adam believed that what he was doing was enough and didn't need Omar's interference. He would say, "The book is just words. There's nothing in it that I don't already know. I'm older and know what's best for the palace." Ramez mocked both of them, saying to Adam, "You're wasting your time cleaning the furniture while we could be enjoying everything here." And to Omar, "Our father isn't here, and he won't know what we're doing." As time went on, the consequences of their actions began to appear. The furniture Adam cared for remained tidy at first, but with no repairs, it began to lose its shine. The rooms became dusty. The garden, which everyone neglected except for Omar, began to lose its fertility. The fruit trees started to wither because Omar alone couldn't take care of them. He needed help, but Adam and Ramez were preoccupied. The stored resources that Ramez consumed recklessly began to run out. The food that was once abundant became scarce. Hunger began to creep into the palace, but Ramez refused to stop his indulgent ways. Omar felt helpless. He tried his best to stop the deterioration, but he didn't have the strength to do it alone. He read the book every night, searching for a solution, realizing cooperation was needed. One night, a violent storm struck the palace. The winds howled fiercely and rain poured heavily. Water began to seep inside due to the windows Adam had neglected to repair. The electricity went out. Omar stood in a corner of the grand hall, holding the book, watching with deep sadness. Water was leaking, the furniture was being ruined, and darkness enveloped the place. He felt heartbroken. Omar thought, "If only they had listened to me. If only we had worked together, we wouldn't have ended up like this. My father knew we would need this book. He put everything in it, but I was alone." Omar added sorrowfully, "My father told us the palace is a trust, and if we neglected it, he would hold us accountable. He warned us about the consequences, but we couldn't succeed alone." Adam began to feel uneasy, knowing deep down that if he had listened to Omar and read the book, things would have been different. But he kept telling himself, "I am the eldest and I know what I'm doing." Despite his attempts to fix things, Adam ignored the reality that the palace required teamwork. He focused on the details while missing the bigger picture. Ramez lived under the illusion that the palace would remain full of blessings no matter what he did. But hunger began to creep in when the resources finally ran out. Ramez tried to gather more food from the garden, but he was shocked to find the trees withered and the land dry. Instead of admitting his responsibility, he started blaming everyone else. Then he fell silent for a moment, as if catching his breath, and said, "I'm young. I want to live my life. Am I supposed to spend all my time working and reading my father's instructions? That's too much to ask. I just want to enjoy myself and live like others do. Why should I be the one to bear all the responsibility? Why did our father leave us in the first place? Why didn't he solve these problems himself?" He then raised his voice slightly, as if the feeling of injustice was growing inside him. If the palace was so important to him, why did he leave it to us? Why did he leave it all? This isn't my fault. Why am I the one who has to deal with all this? It's his fault. If he had stayed here and faced these problems himself, we wouldn't have ended up like this. How does he expect us to fix everything on our own? Omar stepped forward with steady steps, trying to contain his anger, and said in a more serious tone, Ramez, what's happening now is not normal. The palace is collapsing, and the garden is completely dead. If we don't act together now, you'll soon realize that everything will be lost. Ramez, angry, grabbed his brother by the collar and said, You act like you're in charge of all of us. Why don't you just do what you want without bothering me? I don't care about the garden or anything else. None of this is my concern, Omar replied firmly. The palace doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to all of us. If you continue with this indifference, we'll be left with nothing. Why do you insist on being so selfish? At that moment, Adam, who had been observing the argument from a distance, intervened. Adam said with a stern tone, That's enough, Ramez. Leave Omar alone. I'm busy with other matters in the palace, and I don't want to waste my time on these endless discussions. Omar turned toward Adam and looked at him angrily, saying, Adam, you're the eldest, and you should have been our leader. Instead of avoiding responsibility, you should have brought us together to work as a team to protect the palace and the garden. But you chose to ignore everything and let things fall apart. Adam stepped forward angrily toward Omar and replied sharply, Don't try to blame me. I'm doing what I think is important. If you think I'm going to drop everything and follow you, you're mistaken. I have more important things to do. Don't impose your opinions on me. Omar retorted, his voice full of frustration. You're both making excuses for yourselves, but the truth is, you're running away from your responsibilities. When things reach the point of no return, you'll realize that I was right, but by then, it will be too late. One night, while the three brothers were in the grand hall, a violent storm struck the palace. The sound of the wind shook the doors and windows, and rain began to leak through the roof. The brothers looked at each other, each carrying a different emotion. Adam felt ashamed, but he couldn't bring himself to admit his mistake. Ramez was nervous and scared for the first time, but he tried to hide it behind a mask of indifference. Omar, with tears streaming down his face, called his father. Omar said, Father, what should I do? The palace is no longer a safe place to live, and my brothers have left me to do all the work alone. Suddenly, amidst the storm, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the palace. The brothers turned toward the door, their faces filled with shock and fear. It was their father, Yusuf, who had returned. He stood in the middle of the hall, his eyes scanning the scene. He saw the cracked walls, the broken furniture, and the faces of his sons, which carried a mix of regret and fear. He spoke in a calm voice, but one that carried firmness. I have returned as I promised you. But what I see here is not what I expected. Tell me, what have you done with the palace? Adam spoke first, trying to defend himself. Father, I tried to take care of the palace. I cleaned the furniture and organized the rooms, but things got out of control. Ramez, trying to evade responsibility, said, Father, I was just living the way I wanted. But the palace started to fall apart. I didn't know things would come to this. Omar was the last to speak, his voice filled with sadness. Father, I read the book and tried to follow its instructions, but I couldn't do everything alone. I asked my brothers for help, but they wouldn't listen to me. Yusuf looked at each of them with eyes full of love, yet tinged with sadness. Then he said, My sons, I gave you the palace and the book of instructions not because I wanted to watch over you or control you, but because I wanted you to learn wisdom and responsibility. The palace is not just a place to live. It's an opportunity to show your true character. He added, Adam, your focus on appearances without addressing the essence made you overlook the foundation of the palace. Ramez, Your recklessness and indifference destroyed what could have been an everlasting blessing. Omar, although you tried, relying solely on yourself was not enough. The book was clear. Success requires the cooperation of everyone. The father stood in the middle of the hall and firmly announced, "The palace, as it is now, cannot continue. I will rebuild it, but you will no longer live in it as you once did. What you have done will determine your place in the future. Omar, because you try to follow what I asked of you, I will grant you the palace. You are the one who preserved it to the best of your ability, the one who upheld the blessing, and you are truly worthy of living in it. Adam, you made a mistake when you acted on what was not yours as if it were. The palace does not belong to you. You are not its owner. I am the one who built it, and I am the one who decides who lives in it. I gave you the chance to manage it according to my will, but you managed it according to your desires. Now that I have returned, you will no longer have a place here. Go and find another place according to your own will, for I will not accept anyone acting within what is mine without my permission. As for you, Ramez, you will no longer live in the palace. I will prepare another place for you. Those who cause harm despite the warnings will only return to more corruption, so I will not give you another chance. You will have a place that befits you and your actions." The father sat on his large chair and began to speak in a deep voice filled with wisdom. "My sons, have you ever wondered why I left you here? Why I gave you this palace?" The brothers looked at one another in silence. None of them had a clear answer. "The palace I gave you was not just a place to live. It was a test. I wanted to teach you a great lesson about life itself and about what the Creator wants from us. I wanted you to understand that life is not just about enjoyment or personal responsibility. It is a trust, governed by a religion that organizes this trust." The father lifted the book in his hands and said, "This book was not merely a set of instructions for running the palace. It was a symbol of what religion offers us. Religion is the book that sets the right path for us and teaches us how to deal with the blessings that Allah has given us. The palace, the garden, and all the resources within it were symbols of this world. And like this palace, the world is full of blessings, but it is temporary. If you neglect it or misuse it, it will become a burden, and you will lose everything in it." The father turned to Adam first and said, "Adam, you are the eldest, and it was natural for you to take on leadership. But you made a mistake when you relied solely on yourself and refused to communicate with me or cooperate with your brothers. You became preoccupied with small details, focusing on superficial matters while neglecting the bigger issues that were the foundation of the palace's success. You thought that what you deemed right was enough to manage things, but you ignored that I, as your father, know more than you do, and that the book contained the wisdom and plan you needed. Had you read the book carefully, you would have understood what was truly required of you. You would not have overlooked the importance of planning for what mattered most. Wisdom is not in knowledge alone, nor in relying only on what you think is appropriate, but in following, applying, and working together with others. You should have realized that planning according to the instructions and working collectively is what preserves blessings, not getting lost in details or conflicts that distract you from your core responsibilities." Then the father turned to Ramez and spoke with a voice full of sorrow. "Ramez, you loved yourself in a selfish way. You thought only of yourself and enjoyed the blessings without asking yourself, how can I preserve them? What is my role? You ignored the book I wrote for you and did not care about the instructions I included in it for your benefit. Your neglect of the book was not just a disregard for my words. It was proof that you did not appreciate the blessing in your hands. You saw the palace and its contents as an opportunity for enjoyment only, without thinking about your responsibility toward it. You saw with your own eyes how your disregard for the book led to chaos and loss, and how it exposed you to blame and consequences. You squandered these blessings with your own hands because you failed to look beyond temporary pleasure. But my son, you still have time to fix what you've ruined. If you learn from this lesson and realize that blessings only last through preserving and working for them, you will know how to truly deserve them again. This world is not merely a place for pleasure. It is a trust and a responsibility. Its blessings cannot endure if they're not safeguarded. Always remember that those who neglect the work required of them will lose what they have. Don't waste the opportunity that still lies before you, my son. You must learn that blessings are not an inherent right, but something that we must maintain through work and commitment. I hope you think carefully about what has happened and that you won't repeat your mistakes again. Finally, the father looked at Omar with a smile full of pride and said, Omar, you are the one who respected the book and followed what it contained to the best of your ability. You didn't just read the instructions. You adhered to them and understood that the palace was not yours, but a trust placed in your care. You are the one who understood that the blessings you hold are not your own, but a trust. To show gratitude to the one who bestowed them upon you is to act in accordance with his will and obey what I instructed you. You did not neglect your responsibilities, nor were you deceived by my absence, the beauty of the palace, its vastness, or the abundance of its resources. You used your mind to shoulder your responsibilities, even when your brothers failed to assist you. You succeeded, my son, because you understood that obedience and action are the paths to success. The father stood, approached Omar, placed his hand on his shoulder, and said, I wanted to see who among you would care about what I wrote and adhere to what I asked. I have prepared a great reward for that. You are the true winner because you did what was required of you, respected your trust, and never forgot that the palace was not yours but a test. Continue on this path, my son, so that you will always be a winner. The father stood and looked at his sons for a long moment before saying, Life, like this palace, is a trust, and the Creator has given us this trust to see how we will handle it. Religion is the key to understanding this trust. It is the book that tells us how to live, how to care for the blessings, and how to balance our rights and responsibilities. If you respect religion, you will live in peace and preserve the blessings you hold. But if you ignore it, your life will collapse just as this palace did. He added, There are 3 rules you must always live by. Understand that you are responsible for this world entrusted to you. Everything you own, whether wealth, health, or time, is a trust given to you by Allah, and you will be held accountable for it one day. Religion is not a restriction, but a light that guides you. If you read the book and understand it, you will realize that all its teachings aim to preserve your life and happiness, not to restrict you. Cooperation is the essence of life. No one can succeed alone. Just as you needed each other here, all humans need one another in this world. Don't let pride or selfishness stop you from working together. Silence fell once again, and the sons looked at their father as his words began to find their way into their hearts. We have come one step closer to the truth, and a question looms on the horizon that could lead us to know the Creator. What is the religion that the Creator has established? In the next episode, inshallah, we will delve into this question together and search for the answer. We will try to uncover together. Can the Creator be known as He truly is through multiple paths, or has He defined a specific path that, if followed, will lead us to Him? In the next episode, Allah willing, we will face this question together and explore the answer. Your journey to the truth is an ongoing one. It may seem challenging and long, but it is worth every effort made to reach the desired goal. It is a journey that requires patience, reflection, and deep thought, but it ultimately holds the most beautiful meanings and profound values. Stay with us, for the answer to this question may be a new key to a deeper understanding of our lives and purposes. The horizon is still vast before us, and the journey has not yet ended. I ask Allah to make us among those who learn and act upon what they have learned, so that our knowledge becomes a light that illuminates our path in this world and the hereafter. Peace be upon you, and the mercy and blessings of Allah.